spring blast is on the way. Kia ora, hello, I'm Philip Duncan. Thank you so much for joining us for our Tuesday weather update for November the 22nd. And all eyes are on the Tasman Sea. We've got a cold front out here. This is it moving in later on Tuesday afternoon and moves across the North Island tonight. Behind it though, the big windy west to southwest change. Plenty of heavy showers, squalls and thunderstorms. And that windy weather starts all the way here from Bass Strait and spreads out into the New Zealand area. The other main feature on this wind map is the big area of high pressure moving in from Western Australia, and that's expanding out and shutting off that colder southerly that's been around for the last couple of days. But let's take a look at the animated satellite map. Now this shows water vapor. Bright white shows where the heaviest downpours are basically, and the dark shaded area shows where it's driest or drizzly sort of stuff. Now if you take a look out to the east, this bright cloud you can see sort of exploding up here, that's the thunderstorm weather that we had on Sunday. Now the dark shaded stuff, that's the drizzly weather we had in places like Auckland on Monday. But the main focus here, see the cold front? Well, just behind that, these are the big thunderstorms, the speckled cloud as we call it. When you see that showing up with these bright blobs all over the place, that's a sign of squally, thundery weather. And the IBM Weather Watch thunderstorm map completely backs that up. Look at all these isolated thunderstorms, each one of these basically its own downpour or squall, which can bring sudden gale force winds out of nowhere, pouring with rain, thunderstorm, possibly even hail, and then all of a sudden it clears up, the sun comes out and the wind disappears. We're going to be getting that for the next few days. By the way, this is an initial burst of thunderstorms with a band of rain just ahead of the front, but you can already see some of these windy conditions pushing in squally showers down to the west coast. Let's take a look at rainfall. This is for the next 2 days, starting from this morning. And again, it's the North Island central western areas getting the bulk of that rain. Some will make it over towards places like Opotiki in the eastern Bay of Plenty. Rainfall totals about 45 to 90 millimetres for the North Island. And on the west coast, similar rainfall totals except for this one area here in the bright blue. That's where you're getting up to 100 to 150 millimetres coming through, which is fairly normal for your side of the South Island. And this dark blue and the green, bottom of the scale, just a few spits coming through, not a lot on the way. In Australia, the bulk of the rain actually up here in Western Australia around Broome, you're getting up to 90, even 100 millimetres, which is quite a lot. And some of that spilling down to inland areas like Alice Springs, although only about 20 millimetres coming through for you. Now the windy weather starts today. This is at lunchtime, around about 11 o'clock this morning in Australia, around about early afternoon for New Zealand. These are the big winds heading towards New Zealand. Now they're just exiting Australia with gale force winds around parts of Tasmania and the southeastern corner of Victoria, lower part of New South Wales. Those are the areas getting those strong winds. And then they fan out across New Zealand here on Wednesday. This is at 1 o'clock on Wednesday in the afternoon. Similar kind of winds right across the North Island. You're in that 60 to 80 kilometre an hour range. So gusty winds across the North Island. Strongest winds here through the hills of central Hawke's Bay, where they're getting up to about 100 k's an hour. And the South Island's also blustery, but not quite as bad. The North Island does look more exposed. So let's get into the forecast, finally. Here we are on Wednesday. So look at all these low pressure zones down here. That's just putting more pressure on these windy conditions to the north. So very windy, squally showers, some with thunderstorms and maybe hail and potentially damaging winds. You can even get a small tornado out of this sort of setup. So blustery stuff coming through, and then a pulse of colder air coming through there on Wednesday. And by Thursday, that colder air goes all the way up across the South Island. It's not a major polar blast or anything like that, but the temperatures drop for you on Thursday in the South Island. Still windy and showery in the North Island with squalls, and still the chance of a few isolated thunderstorms. Conditions over here settling down as that big high rolls on in. Now by Friday, the high finally brings more settled weather to Tasmania. Hobart, you've still got the risk of a few showers, southerlies just blowing by through there. But over in New Zealand, it's still very much stuck in the middle of this spring blast. Still plenty of windy sou'westers across the country, plenty of showers, mostly on the western side. There will be a few spilling over to the east, but the accumulation is quite low. And that dark blue line, which indicates the cold air, that is now starting to drop further back south again. So for the most part, It warms up again going into Saturday, but there's one exception down here in the south. On Saturday, it sort of springs back to that lower part. So Southland and maybe Otago, not overly warm on Saturday as that change comes back with a southerly. But elsewhere, it's typical kind of spring weather, west to northwest winds, which aren't too cold, but still seeing some heavy downpours, and again, the chance of an isolated thunderstorm. Now, final map is this one here going into the weekend, seeing high pressure out in the Tasman. Not a very strong high, but it's enough to kind of settle things down briefly, but it's still unsettled over the New Zealand area, and the next burst of unsettled weather returns to Victoria and Tasmania, and a little bit to some degree into South Australia. New South Wales, Queensland, not a lot going on, and the tropics, not a lot going on as well. We've just got the usual thunderstorms, no sign of any tropical cyclones or storms, touch wood. That's all from me. We'll see you again tomorrow with our next update.